I am Diego Canales. I am currently one of the 4 virtual artists in residence for Cultivarte. I'm going to be doing an artist talk here with Mauro, which I'm going to introduce. I know at the moment you're still represented by Unit Gallery in London. I also saw that you have the Amplifier Fund, right? I know it's like a platform to help artists out. Would you like to discuss that for a little bit before we move on to our questions?
Sure. Yeah. It's a project I started in maybe 2020 or 2021, I think, actually. But like most of my projects, it's like, it's slow, kind of gaining, traction, and yeah, it's a fun project. It's basically the essentially like a crowd-funded, basically like a raffle, right? What I do is I make a small study, and then I sell about 10 prints of it that are all like hand embellished, and then I give the money away to an artist, and it's just a very small way of giving back. So like hiccups along the way, different things that I didn't know about, when it comes to like fundraising and stuff like that. And so I'm just kind of learning slowly to work my way around all of the kind of logistical things. Like, it's very interesting when it comes to tax season. If you raise money and you give it away and you don't give it to a nonprofit organization, you end up having to pay taxes on it, which is a very interesting part of our economic system that I didn't know about. And I learned about that. And so that kind of was the thing that had maybe put a small hiccup in the project, but everything is kind of back up and running now. And yeah, it's just kind of one of those things that I'm learning about a little bit along the way and trying to figure things out as I go.
Looking at nonprofits, like arts nonprofits, would be a good way to like start understanding. I know I was really grateful for Cultivarte to pretty much put together a residency program, which is something that I wasn't aware of, like when I was in Laredo.
Yeah, that's major.
So it's major for the city.
It's really cool because I think we both started, like I started the Amplifier Fund and they started the residency at sort of about the same time. And the residency has just like been so much cooler of a project to watch grow,
The more of these kind of nonprofits pop up, I guess it would reach like a wider range of artists. I mean, I know like the community is growing a lot in Laredo. I know I've been up here in Houston, but I'm looking down all the time and I've seen a lot of growth, which is awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
When I got invited, or like when I applied to the residency at Cultivarte, I guess I was a teacher at the time. Applying to the residency is interesting because you need to start at least for me, I start thinking like, what am I going to produce for them, right? And I know from the previous one is that it gets also shown at a gallery. So even just before like typing out a proposal, it's just figuring out what project am I going to do and how is it going to look? And you start asking questions like, oh, what are the other artists in the residency, what are they going to do? At least the way I went about it, and I learned a lot from my previous residency, was that the last thing you want during a residency is to start feeling a lot of like pressure from a residency that you put yourself in. So I kind of chose to do something a little bit more to what I was doing at the time. So I was a teacher. I was also finding ways to like find pockets of time to produce work, even if it was just like sketching and things like that. And I also eventually started to learn of what like my students were doing. These are kids that are from like 1st through 6th, but especially the young ones, how they're able to come into the classroom and they don't ask questions. They just, they're able to produce drawings from scratch, from a white paper to something at the end of the class, which is something that I guess a lot of us have issues with when it comes to like staring at a white canvas or staring at a white piece of paper.
Right. Yeah.
But it's been a lot easier for me to kind of like have ideas. So it was very easy for me to like apply to this residency. And when I pitched them, hey, like I'm going to be on automatic, I kind of wanted to mimic these kind of like habits that these children have, of just not really asking too many questions about what they're doing, but just whatever they've absorbed throughout their day or their weeks, is just putting them down on paper, right? So whatever they observe, whether it be like oh, I
Yeah.
guess they're into Among Us, like they put it down, they're applying to the paper to at least like get their skills going. So I'm doing something similar to that, kind of just restricting my content. I'm more concerned about like the process and more concerned about like actually getting work out. Eventually when I did apply, like I did want to like kind of like visualize what I was going to be turning into them at the end of the residency. So I always think kind of like backwards. I think of like, what am I going to do? Kind of like make a list and then just start chipping away at that list. But I would like to hear about
Right.
how do you go about like, I guess, getting invited to these shows, and you need to understand, okay, well, I need to fill this space. How do you go about it from then until the end where you start hanging up your work and showing the work publicly?
Well, in terms of like the residencies themselves, and I actually, like, if I never did another residency in my whole life, I would be happy, because the one that I did was like so amazing. But it was like it's called the Forest Project, and it's in London, and I got to stay there for a whole month and just basically paint, you know. And I kind of basically just try to treat it like a continuous thread, really. That's sort of the way I see it. And you know, I for one body of work kind of just goes into the next. I feel like that's most artists, right? You're just kind of following a thread. I think because of that, I don't feel as much pressure to maybe like have a lot of preliminary things ready. But that's also because I'm like constantly, you know what I mean? Like I'm sure you are too, just got so much of that. And then when I went like, so for the residency specifically, when I got there, the two paintings that I did were these these large cursed images of they both kind of resembled just sort of like, they both had this sort of interaction with computers, you know, between people, and they were just kind of immersive, but in this sort of funny way. And the other one was kind of like almost like this sort of like post-societal kind of like interesting archaeological find or something. And I think that I'm very interested in these cursed images as sort of like anthropological kind of like signals. You know, then I think that they communicate different ideas about the world that we're living in right now, especially, you know, maybe at a certain age bracket, within a certain age bracket. And I think that's important to look at because, you know, like, you know, as cheesy as it is, it's true that children are the future, right? Or the youth is the future. And so you look at that and it's almost like a way of documenting where the world is going, or looking at where the world is going through these images.
Yeah.
So when I'm, you know, so for the residency again, I started these computer images, and then when I got home, the images that I started there eventually blossomed into my solo show that I had later, you know, the next year with Unit London, which was called The Last Man.
Yeah, that's really interesting to think about, because it's almost like you were, I mean, it almost seems like you were going to do that work regardless of the residency. It's like
Right.
they just caught you like in a pocket of time where like you were getting ideas ready for I guess like a full-on exhibition, which is pretty great. Because I think even me, I would love to like develop this further outside of the residency and kind of just go on with that momentum, which is, I'm pretty sure, a momentum that you've like maintained already for like a few years.
Right.
Once you finish an exhibition, most likely you're pretty burned out, but I know right now you're on vacation, but you're still painting, you know, like you're still doing something every day,
I'm
I'm
painting out
assuming.
here, bro. I'm painting
Yeah.
out here, man. Yeah, it's that
Yeah.
the thing, man. The thing that's so awesome about painting, man, is that it has like continually so much to offer, man. It's like, you know, and again, it's about just like where people are, and like people are. I'm with people at the beach, you know, so I paint the beach today, and that's what I'm doing, you know, and that's like today, that's my subject matter, you know, and it doesn't matter like you know, the other things are market considerations, right? But in terms of the art itself, you know, it's like it's autobiographical. It's like a journal, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and your days are all looking very different, and that's okay. It's still you, you know.
That's like a great mentality to just be like, hey, this is what I'm gonna do today. You don't really worry too much about oh, what am I going to paint today? Like you already decided, like I'm going to paint whatever's happening right now, right? So you're at the beach, you're going to paint the beach. And even
Yeah.
for me, like if I don't know what to, I guess like for me, it's always the sketchbooks, markers, things like that. I'm more concerned about using the material, and then other
Yeah,
than that,
yeah,
I just,
I see you're
yeah.
always you're always engaged. But I also do believe in like periods of like rest, you know,
Hmm.
where you're, you know, maybe consciously stepping away for a little bit, etc. I do have periods like that as well. I'm not
Hmm.
always like on.
It's a balance, I'm sure, because if you don't, yeah, like you could bring yourself out into like potentially not doing like a next project, like I guess in a not very efficiently, you know, or like you going into a project very exhausted because you weren't able to shut down.
Yeah, and then it's just also, you know, like understanding and kind of like respecting your own cyclical creative process, you know, like at what
Hmm.
periods are you really gathering information? At what periods are you putting things out? Like when I'm here like at the beach, like doing, you know, like a painting of like the ocean or whatever, like I'm not thinking about my work. You know what I mean? It's just
Hmm.
kind of like having fun with the medium, like it's completely different. It's like it feels separate to some degree, you know, than like
Hmm.
when I'm in my studio and uh like it's not that it's more serious or important, but like when I'm it's like engaging in the thing, but like passively almost, you know, and then the thing that like comes from there, I'm able to take into the studio and develop that further
Hmm.
consciously, you know. But out here is like, let me forget everything that I'm working with in the studio so that I can, in a way, like actually draw inspiration from myself. You know what I mean? And so
Hmm.
that I can
Yeah.
like try to get out of myself enough to put something down that is novel enough for me to be like, oh, that's different coming from me, even, you know, like,
Hmm.
and let me develop that. And then that's how you create new facets to yourself, you know?
How do you schedule yourself
Mhm.
as a full-time artist? I'm currently like on vacation, so I kind of wanted to see, okay, what is
Mhm.
it like to be home all day? Like I don't have to work since I'm on vacation. So yeah, how do I schedule myself to do that? And for me, I mean, unfortunately, and it's been something that like has been a problem since college, was that if I'm at home, like I'm resting. That's one of the reasons why when I would go to school, like I would go there in the morning and leave at night, because like as long as I was there, I was most likely going to do work. For me, like working from home, it's like a huge distraction to have like a TV, right? To have like Elden Ring, you know, to have like the fridge,
Yeah.
or like to have a bed, you know. It happens a lot. So and so I start thinking like, what is it like, you know, like how do you put like how do you develop like healthier habits? So what's your schedule like, and like how do you balance like I guess like
So
social life, I guess like work, and I know like right now like taking your days off.
yeah, so I've, you know, got like a couple of things that I do that I try to do every day, you know, with a lot of consistency, and obviously, you know, it's painting. And I started, you know, around the pandemic, I started kind of like a new fitness routine. And so I've been doing that, and I lost kind of like 50 pounds or something. So like
Mm-hmm.
it's been something else that I've worked into my lifestyle. And so basically the way that I schedule these things is around, I'm noticing that it's around the season. It's like if it's summer, it's different than if it's in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
So in the winter, you know, I'll normally wake up and do some exercise in the morning because I'm very cold and I want to warm up. Whereas in the summer, I'll do it at night. So that puts my studio schedule in kind of different places.
Mm-hmm.
But for right now, for instance, in the summer, I aim to be at the studio by around 11. The first thing I do now, I turn on the PlayStation or I play with my tech deck, like fingerboard. And then I'll do that for like another 15 minutes. And then from there, I'll start painting because I'll feel like a wasteoid. And so the idea that what I realized is that like the way that I like hacked my own productivity is to put the things that I really, all my distractions with painting very close together and not at
Mm-hmm.
home, and put them where I'm painting so that, because the way, I guess it's just the way my like maybe attention works.
Mm-hmm.
I have to be like at different stations So I have like I have a spray booth like station in my studio. I have a screen printing setup, and I have like where I do my oil painting, and then I have like my setup where I do my small little paintings.
Hmm.
Um, and so I'm working back and forth between, you know, with all of the maybe those like 5 stations, right? So I'm a big believer in like doing things in cycles. So
Hmm.
I'll play for a little bit and then I get to work, and then most of the time what happens is it'll be maybe like 3 4 hours will go by, and then, you know, and I won't look up, you know what I mean? And then
Hmm.
I'll get tired, and then I'll like play with my stuff for a little bit longer, and then I'll do another cycle. So I'll leave, let's say I get there around 11. Most days I'll leave, get home around maybe 6 or 7, and then I'll work out when I get home, eat a little bit, take a shower, spend a little bit of time with Hannah, and then I'll drive back to the studio.
Yeah.
So it's very hectic,
Yeah.
but
I mean,
it's
yeah.
like, you know, it's a routine though, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you molded a schedule for you. Like you've already embraced that you're gonna be like that. So you're pretty much like saying like, hey, you know what? So you're gonna take advantage of the times that you're gonna actually want to feel like working, and you're probably gonna do like a more like, I guess, efficient job at like doing it.
And there's also something very powerful about like guilt tripping yourself at the beginning of the day, like by playing
Yes.
video games, like to get you into painting. I'm not even joking, man. Like I don't like I like, you know, I think we tend to slip into these very like purist kind of ways of thinking about
Hmm.
our art and our work and our approach to it, you know. And if like the more you can just make it a natural extension of like, you know, like who you are, like the better.
Hmm.
And so like, yeah, in my studio I've got like a big like I've got my PlayStation and a little monitor, but I've got this really big beanbag chair. It's like this company called Yogibo that I found on Amazon or something.
Hmm.
But it's like a big long beanbag chair. You can just lay in it, right? So that's like my little spot, and I have it in like in a little corner.
It's good. I know, like I have to be doing that because if I do sit down for like I've never drawn like 3 hours like consecutively. There's always going to be something um, either it might be like physical discomfort from like pressing down on the ruler for too long, or my back hurts or my neck hurts. So like you are want to like I'm gonna want to get up until yeah it happens where I'm just like fuck, it's been a while and I guess I haven't gotten a lot of work done. And that's the type of guilt trip that brings me back to the desk to continue my work. Obviously, also like
Yeah.
I really take advantage of like deadlines and schedules, especially when other people put them. Like that really gets me to work more efficiently than when there's not a lot of pressure.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. I agree. Yeah,
Mhm.
I do really well under pressing deadlines, I feel like.
I know you ship out your work, right? Internationally, so I'm assuming that you have to finish it earlier than what's the, I guess, like the deadlines that they might give you.
Yeah, well, the really cool thing is that like yeah, the work gets shipped out maybe just a couple of weeks
Hmm.
before a show deadline, like or before the show opening. So it's yeah, but I've always felt like I've had like a remarkably good like amount of time to work on stuff.
I know depending on the work, the type of work you ship out, like you have to package it differently. Um, would you mind like kind of like going a little bit deeper on like the logistics of like shipping out like bigger work on how you go about that?
Yeah, so mostly large paintings. I mostly ship them rolled. So from Uline, that shipping company, I buy these. They have these. They're like, I think they're 6 feet tall and they're 8 inches, but it's a big cardboard tube, and
Hmm.
it has a cap for both ends. And so I roll my paintings around like a piece of PVC so that there's the core. I slide them into that tube, you know, and they're wrapped with plastic, and then I slide them into the tube and pat it, and then I put the stretchers in there, pat it as well, and it's just like one long. too. Another thing that was very intricate to ship was the sculptures. Those were very fun to package. Because there was a lot of, you know, the wires kind of going in different ways, and there was a lot of very interesting kind of bends to them. And so I was, yeah, that was an interesting one.
Yeah, that's you had like I guess the MacBook charger, right? That sculpture, and also the PlayStation with the controller, right? You had a PS3.
Yeah.
Yeah, which was really cool how like you
Yeah.
showed you were showing the process. I mean, I know like you had put out the sculpture first, and I know you had us like for weeks just wondering like, man, how did he do it? Like, I don't know if you were using epoxy to keep like the cable suspended. Like I thought it was the actual cable until I know like a few weeks after the exhibition, like you were able to show kind of like that it's actually like you bended some, like you had a friend help you out bending some wire together, and I know like putting this like the sculpture
Yep.
together. So it's still, you took it, it was like it was workshop work, you know, like you needed like a different set of tools, because I was really curious about how you did that. It was like I really thought it was like a cable, like you had done something to it.
Oh, that's
uh,
cool, man.
I guess this would lead us to like the last question, which would be about like using your social media as a platform for one of those things would be like to explain the process of your artwork. But I also wanted to talk about like how you're the only one like managing your social media, right? I know sometimes with exhibitions they have like
Yeah.
their own like PR team and graphic design team to do like flyers and things like that.
Mhm.
You're pretty much having to create like a little bit extra content to like promote your work. What's that like? What is something that you learned throughout like the years of using social media and like putting up work? Like how is it, how useful is it, or
Well,
is it a good tool, is it a bad tool? What are some of the flaws that you've encountered using it?
I've found the social media or Instagram specifically to be a very powerful tool. You know, the thing, you know, I found like, you know, so many artist friends on there. Like I've made so many connections. I found the gallery that I work with now, like they're an amazing
Mm-hmm.
gallery. Like I, you know, couldn't be happier. I found my partner on Instagram. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like it's like I've gotten like I've gotten so much from that app.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's just changed so much from those days, and
Mm-hmm.
from when people had just like this super organic reach. So you know, I don't know, man. Like the landscape is just shifted on it so much that you know, there's obviously still people that are able to come up and make a name for themselves and all that stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
what I do see is now that the apps start favoring certain kinds of content, whereas before it was very much like a free for all. Like you put it up and whatever gets liked, you know, what people like, they like it. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
remember like, man, when I used to first like post on Instagram, like in 2012, I remember you would post something and I would just use a couple hashtags and dude, people would just start seeing it, man. Like you could see it and you could go to that hashtag and you could still find your photo in there, like in the
Mm-hmm.
big list. And you know, it was like
It was
yeah, people
young.
were, so it's, you know, the landscape is changing a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
there's, it was very young, yeah. So the landscape is changing, but I don't think that's any reason to give up. You know, everything is just something to continually respond to, you know, and to either
Mm-hmm.
embrace or contend with, because now, even now, like I mean, it's not like I just magically stopped wanting to grow my, you know, reach or anything, and I'm running
Mm-hmm.
into all of these problems, you know. And it's like yeah, so it's just, it's a very it's a difficult thing, but you know, I guess as artists, it's sort of our job to find ways forward through these things, you know.
Yeah, because I know eventually also you kind of like started expanding into like newer social medias to explore them. I know you were using TikTok for a bit. Um, even like I'm sure like like
Yeah.
picking up a lot of like inspiration on that kind of like algorithm that they have there, which is like they promote a specific type of work or like a specific type of content. I'm sorry. How was that also kind of like
Right.
moving? Like you need to be aware of like moving on to like different social medias to like I guess also reaching a wider audience.
Yeah, the thing that I've found about TikTok is that it's like, okay, so I had, when I made my account for the first time, um, I had gotten up to like maybe 10 or about 10, yeah, 10,000 followers within like a relatively short time, like maybe 3 months, 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then for basically no reason, my account got deleted. And that was just very discouraging because they, you know, it's like people talk about that a lot, that it's very fickle, and the
Hmm.
rules are kind of seem very flimsy, and you're kind of subject to breaking a rule at any point that you might not even know about, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, which I think is like one of your big challenges, because I know like a lot of the work that you do is like whatever's happening right now, and most likely it's going to be important to like recollect later in the future, like you make work out of it, sometimes being controversial. So it's also like you become your own PR to kind of like address any like concerns that there might be with like controversial work. So it's really
Right.
interesting how like the artist really has to put up like a lot of additional like toolkits to do that kind of thing, when sometimes a lot of the like some people have the luxury of having like their PR team and their designers and people that know how to market the work.
Yeah, but then
Yeah.
I think the other side to that coin is that people, I don't necessarily believe that that people are owed an explanation for everything an artist does. You know, an artist can do things and they don't have to like address everything.
Hmm.
Because you know, I think it's one of those things where I don't know, like art and sort of like comedy seem to be like sort of within kind of like a similar gray space. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
it's not ever like with art, I don't think it's ever about being offensive for its own sake, but it's like it's about documentation and
Hmm.
the idea that like you should have to explain away every single one of your moves or every single one of your decisions just isn't I say everything I need to say visually because I can't say it with fucking words because I'm not good at
Hmm.
it. Like that's the reason that I paint is because I you know what I'm saying, like because it's more complex and so no matter what you try to tell some people, they're going to see it in a very strict binary regardless of what you say. And the thing is
Hmm.
that well that's because like painting can reach this sort of like nuanced place that words can't always do, you know?
So it's really up to the viewer to perceive it as either like a crude joke, or to see it like as a record, like being recorded
Right, exactly. Yeah.
for later, so.
Yeah, and then you look and
Mm.
then you look at like you look at the artist's like track record over time, and that's how you judge like you know that's how you judge like whether or not they're operating in good faith. You just look at
Hmm.
their like you look at their body of work, you know. You
Yeah.
don't like man like the amount of times that I like somebody will take like one painting of mine out of like the hundreds that I've probably made and then like extrapolate like make an entire generalizing like statement about my entire like effort as an artist is just
Hmm.
ridiculous. And it's like, bro, I was painting this like at like 12 just to like, you know, mess around. And it's like it's a Wojak and you're tripping really hard. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, stuff, you know, it's very interesting. So yeah, no, not every people are definitely not owed an explanation for everything.
It might be something that might be limiting like a lot of artists from producing like incredible work, or even like documenting like important things that they feel like that they want to be putting down on paper or on canvas. It's really interesting to hear about that. And I feel like it's probably also like a healthier like way of like putting out the work without like worrying too much, because I feel like it'll also like slow you down to produce whatever you need to produce next if you're too caught up with those type of
It really
concerns
does,
from.
man. It really does. Yeah, it's uh as long I think as long as you know why you're doing what you're doing, you're fine. You know, I try to do like a lot of prototypes, right? So like I make a lot of sometimes they're big, sometimes they're small, but I look at like a lot of the things that I do is sort of like prototypes for larger bodies of work, right? So it'll be
Hmm.
like a small sketch that could eventually evolve into an entire series or something like that. And so what I try to do is like work in like maybe as many different directions as possible kind of thing, like, and
Hmm.
then just see what sticks and what doesn't over time. So right now, you know, I'm working with rooms, right? Like these kind of spaces and these sort of
Hmm.
like battle station computer setup, neckbeard nest kind of like,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, yeah, yeah. So I'm working with a lot of those, and you know, when I was painting the largest painting for the show that I just had,
Mm-hmm.
the last part that I painted was the wires, you know, because it was the
Mm-hmm.
most tedious thing to paint, and there was a lot of wires in the painting. So that's the last thing I painted. So at the very end of the painting, there was just like everything was like fully rendered except for the wires, and they were just all
Mm-hmm.
white. And so, like when I looked at that, like, and I had that sitting there for about a week maybe, and that was the thing that got me thinking about wires, and that's eventually where the sculptures came from, right? So
Okay.
like I'm right now just kind of like looking at little moments like that at different in different pieces and stuff, and just trying to
Yeah.
notice, you know, little things and see how to move forward right now.
I'm also like at really close to the end of my project. A lot of this time I was producing these works. Well, the whole point was that I'm not gonna worry too much about the context. It's just like this is what I'm like reading, this is what I'm observing. And I've already set like these like, I guess, conceptual limitations. That way I could just sit down and work, which has helped out a lot. So obviously like at the end of all this, I'm gonna have to write about it. Writing an artist statement, kind of like putting everything together like in a project.
Right.
Is it something that you do prior to doing your work, or do you do the work and then you start thinking about why did you do this?
I think I develop them simultaneously. Like as I'm working, like a little
Mm-hmm.
phrase will come to my head that's kind of a descriptive about the work, and I'll just put it
Mm-hmm.
down in my notes, like in my note app or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I just, you know, and then at the end, it's like I've got all these paintings and then little things that go with each painting, and then I can kind of like, you know, piece them together, or like you know, little notes here and there, and then I'll flesh it out. So I kind of do
Mm-hmm.
it simultaneously, and for me, like, you know, I just try to keep it as simple as possible and just tell people what I was thinking about while I was making these paintings, you know.
You don't worry too much about like also taking it out of context or like going off topic. As this, you keep it really sober to like, hey, this is what this was my thought process and this is why I produced it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Providing context for the work that they're viewing, you know, you're giving them the
Mm-hmm.
framework so that they can
Yeah.
go in kind of like with the right, you know, frame of reference.
Yeah, I guess like with my work it's a little bit more like it's something, it's not something that is abstract. So yeah, it's gonna be
Right.
one of those things where like I'm getting to that point where it's like, well, what is it, and what am I gonna write about this? And I guess putting my words together and putting all that together, which I don't know how long it takes for you to like edit your statement, but it's always something that I'm just thinking
Very,
about, and I'm always
very,
picking at it, picking
very
at it.
long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Yes.
Hmm.
And then Hannah helps me a lot.
Oh yeah, of course. Like a second set of eyes is always like helpful to.
Yeah, no, just adding things that weren't there that are like absolutely necessary or brilliant, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, Mauro, I think we're pretty much reaching a time where I might have to let you go. But I mean, thanks again. Thank you so much for
Yeah, of
taking some
course,
of
man.
your
I was
time.
super happy to do it.
Keep in touch. Wish you well, and I'm going to be looking forward to the work that you're putting out soon.
Likewise, man. I really appreciate this opportunity, and yeah, I hope the rest of it goes really well.
All right, I appreciate that, man. Thank you.